What's up? Welcome back to another episode of the Three Pillars of Man with my man
Alex James.
and Addison Corbin.
Yes, sir. Three Pills of Man. Another
Yes, sir.
episode. How
All
you
right.
feeling, man?
Man, I'm feeling good. I'm running a million miles an hour,
Yeah.
and I feel like my gas tank is half full.
Yeah. Now running on fumes a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's the way I like it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think with running on fumes, once you step back, you realize like, wow, I've actually accomplished a lot. But sometimes when you're in it, you don't really have that hindsight just yet until it's after it's done. So
yeah, there's a lot of transition points happening
right.
at this current moment, and
Right.
some of the things are something that I've thought about in the past, but I didn't necessarily address them at the time.
Right.
Kind of like that procrastination of like, oh, everything's gonna be okay. You know, I'll handle that when I get a little bit more time. Not really realizing that I had more time at that moment to address those. So it's making some adjustments as far as the business wise, and then having to take on a lot more. That I was handing off. But I was realizing, and this is something that I kind of picked up on during the transition, because I had the opportunity to delegate.
Yeah.
I may have been over delegating on a lot of things to people who necessarily didn't need to have that delegation.
Right.
And it started leading me into, for myself, what I noticed was my presence inside of my company was it was lacking.
Yeah, it's almost like I always feel like because I'm a person I like to be in the weeds, but I can just imagine someone in your position, you can't be in every conversation with everybody, so you have to delegate. But if I'm understanding what you're saying, you're delegating these responsibilities. Some people thrive in it, and some people are struggling, and so sometimes over delegating, you kind of get more. You're not in the weeds, but you're almost in the danger of like being in the clouds.
Too far up.
Too far up. So it's like, okay, I need to get back at least in the forest. I don't necessarily need to be
right
at the grass.
60,000 feet up.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I've been for the past year. I'm just kind of looking at things and then just letting things kind of maneuver the way that they need to.
Yeah.
And even with like finances, seeing the amount of money that's going out on like payroll salaries, being okay with it and being like, okay, well, you know, probably needs to be tightened up.
Right.
But I'm not having so much weight on my shoulders, so I'm able to work up here.
Right.
But I'm also having to like back and forth, and I'm not having that even middle ground. So I delegated a lot of things. I didn't have so much. I didn't have my finger on the pulse. Of the business.
Yeah.
And so not having that kind of creates it creates too much space for things to happen.
Yeah, too much gray area.
Right. And so that's kind of what I've been running into. But I mean, yeah, it's the name of the game.
Yeah.
And so just making those adjustments, handling that accordingly. So now it's like over the past week, I've been noticing like some of the guys have been making some comments about like, you know, certain things, and I'm like, I don't know how I like that.
Right.
And I don't like that that's your perception of the situation or whatever.
Because it's something you're not intentionally doing.
Right.
I think that's the part where I think just from hearing you, it sounds like it's like, okay, I hear and respect what you're saying, but that's just not my intention. You know,
right.
I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
just for like a quick example on that.
Yeah.
You know, we had a goal planning meeting for next year.
Right.
Today. It was supposed to be on Monday, but it wasn't on the calendar. So not everybody was here.
Right.
And then so I was like, well, you know, let's push it to tomorrow. I can kind of prep up for it a little bit, kind of get a game plan. The idea that I had in my head, and this is where lack of communication comes into play. the idea that I have in my head. I was like, I'll build this out and then we'll do some one-on-ones. We'll get prepped up for each person.
Yep.
And then we'll game plan officially for the goal planning meeting,
Right.
in December, which we always do it this week. Because this is usually an easy week for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I had that plan, sat down. One of my guys was an hour late coming in. And so I was like, we started an hour late. I
Right.
had planned, 2 hours for it.
Right.
And I had an appointment at the end of it. So
Yeah.
we get into it, we get an hour into it. I got a split.
Right.
And Ron had his own plan, right? So two completely different plans.
Right.
He's like, all right, that's fine. We don't really have the time to pre-plan. Let's just jump into it and just work it out as we're going.
Right.
And I'm like, we can't do that anymore because we're not the same size that we used to be.
Right.
We could do that 4 years ago.
Right. When the team was smaller.
Right. Mm-hmm. When you got 3 people, me, him, and an additional person and admin staff, easy.
Yeah.
You can do it on the fly.
Yep.
You get 7, 8 people, you can no longer do that.
Right.
And especially when some of those people are here, some of those people are part-time, like you just can't. You have to do a lot of the background work and then step into it.
Right.
And so he came in and he's throwing red flags, bro, and blowing the whistle and saying, we're doing it this way. And, I'm like,
guys,
whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was like, thankfully, my guy was an hour late to get started.
Right.
I had to split an hour in.
Mm-hmm.
I came back and I was like, hey, guys, I don't like any of the things that we just did. Scratch all that. We do have a good game plan from that initial conversation.
Right.
This is how we're handling it. One-on-ones are set for this week. And so now we got a game plan.
No. So
it feels a little bit better. But the reason I brought all that up was like, one of my guys is like, what do you mean? This is how you do everything. And I was like, saying like I always try to cram things. Basically. And I was like, it's interesting you see it that way. And then one of my other guys piped up and said the same thing. And I was like, it seems that way because I like to get things done in a fast period or a short period of time.
Right.
But you're missing all the pre-planning behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or all the adjustments that
were made. You're not saying, you're just seeing the result, but you're not saying what leads to this. Do you I'll ask you this question and we'll get into our topic.
Yeah.
When your team makes comments like that, well, I'll ask you 2 questions. 1, does it bother you? And 2, do you see some truth in it?
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to. It does bother the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you don't know. You know what I mean?
Right. You don't. Right.
But I had to take, I take a step back and I'm working on this whole. A lot of my guys have been with me such a long time that I allow things to kind of slip a little bit. Yeah. So like the boundary line,
the dynamic, yeah.
And now that we're getting a little bit bigger, people are coming in and they're starting to see like, oh, how things are.
Oh, this person has this type of rapport with that, and so I can be
right.
Yeah.
And so I've had to build those boundaries back up with some folks.
Yeah.
And it's starting to kind of change culture a little bit. It's just that's a whole other conversation, a whole other topic.
Yeah. We can also make that whole episode.
Yeah. So that's a whole other piece, but it does bother me because I'm like, man, you don't see that I was adjusting these things on the back end or whatever.
Right.
But you also have to look at it and say, okay, well, their perception is their reality for a reason.
For sure.
And I have been, backing it up a little bit. I've been in the 60,000 foot view. And so when I do come down or I do make these adjustments, it seems very boom, boom, immediate.
Yeah.
And just random to them, because I'm not having those conversations prior to.
Right.
Because I'm like, I don't have to.
Right.
Yeah, like I don't have to have these conversations prior to, because I've had all these other conversations with my admin. Right. So the delegation. And so then I see him. So
yeah,
it's those adjustments. So you have to have that. You have to be open to that communication on the back end.
Right.
When it comes to that leadership piece.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah, it is there's really no room for any closed-mindedness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can't, because
Yeah.
then you kind of get in that whole other topic of like, you know, no one around you can say anything to you.
Yeah, you're dictator mode
Yeah.
instead of servant leader.
And then I also feel like I'm on the back end of that where I'm like, I'm just trying to make sure everybody's fucking cozy.
Yeah. I'm trying to ruffle feathers. Yeah.
So
that's an interesting dynamic, man.
yeah, transfer of I'm in a transition period, so I just gotta deal with it.
Yeah, man.
What about you, bro? Before we even jump into it, I know you got a lot of stuff and a lot of adjustments on your end.
Yeah, man. I'm for those of you that are tuning in, asking more on the entrepreneur route, I'm more traditional 9 to 5 corporate, trying to climb the ladder. So right now I'm in a position where I now am a team lead of like just a team of 3, right? Mm-hmm. And so and what I'm currently learning and assessing continuously is kind of what you just touched on. Do I need to be in the weeds or do I need to be above level? And right now, I'm in the weeds of like what they're doing. Yeah. Because it's only 3 of us. Yeah. And so I'm more. I like to think of myself as I'm still doing like individual contributor stuff where I'm actually doing like work tasks and everything, but then also like I'm giving them guidance on. I won't even say guidance because the funny thing is they're more experienced than I am. Yeah. So it's more of just giving them like, hey, this is what y'all need to do, or this is how we're going to do it. So and I was actually having a one-on-one with my boss, and I was telling him, I'm like, I'm trying to figure out this dynamic of being the cool leader or versus like when to like be, hey, this is what we're doing, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, yeah, that's something you're always going to try and figure out. Because right now I feel like I'm more cool team lead. And I don't really know how I feel about this, but sometimes they come to me with personal stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like,
all the fucking time.
I'm just like, do I really need to know all that? And so like I catch myself like, someone might tell me, hey, this is going on with my dad and my relationship, blah, blah, blah. And like I catch myself like I'm reading it, but I'm like, okay, let me just be kind of like give a vague answer. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm sorry that's happening to you.
Is it on email or what?
No. It's like this is like in person conversation. It's not like because I definitely try to avoid like any like texting personal stuff. So a lot of these are just like in person conversations. So that's what I'm dealing with now. I with people that are more experienced, I have taken the approach of like, okay, these guys know what they're doing. Yeah. So it's just more of I'm just really trying to eliminate obstacles for them so they can really maximize like their experience and their strengths and skills and all that. So like a lot of what I do is just more of like the political game where like, for example, we had this meeting with our senior vice president and before that meeting we had like a prep meeting. And so I was like, hey, what we're going to do is we have this big meeting with the senior vice president, because what I'm trying to start essentially like a new department within our department. And what we're doing is like we're supporting like the project managers where we're pretty much like their second right-hand man. So whatever meetings or wherever they go, we go, we're helping them like forecast on projects like, hey, this is what you're going to spend for this year and then for the end of the project. And then we're also helping them build like project schedules and all that, and then trying to help them follow that and all that stuff. So, but the thing is, they never had that in this organization. Right. It was always on the project manager doing all that stuff. So I have to sell to our senior vice president, hey, there is value in having somebody being in the weeds of your stuff and letting the project managers focus on executing and facilitating the project.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen it where it can be too much, where if you're a project manager, you not only worry about what's going on physically with the project, but now you're having to handle like all the little administrative, like, oh, I gotta create this, create that, I gotta create a status report so I can send to the so what the meeting was for the senior vice president is I need to figure out how to show value in what we're doing and have the senior vice president buy in.
Right.
And long story short, we got in there, like, and killed it, did a great job. And what I also do is like, I let them talk, like it's not just because in the prep meeting, they're like, well, do we need to just tell you what we think? And I'm like, no, like the point is, I want y'all to talk so the senior vice president can see, like, oh, these guys are very knowledgeable, they know what they're doing. Like, now, if they were not as experienced as I was, it's a different ball game. I'm probably doing most of the talking, but I find myself where it's like, hey, y'all, tell them what you tell the senior vice president. Like, I'll set the stage, right? I'll like, hey, this is our presentation. Boom, we'll go through it, everything, and then after that, I'm like, hey, y'all the ones that are doing this stuff and meeting with the project managers and going into the weeds of your projects. Just tell the senior vice president like what you're doing and like, because I think my strength is I can read a room. The senior vice president, he ain't trying to hear all that what we're doing in the weeds. So I was like, high level, this is what we're trying to do. Here's like one example project of what we're doing, and then I let the team members talk about what they're doing with other project managers and And then after that, he was like, hey, sounds good. His biggest thing was right now we're so manual with stuff. Like we don't have the technologies in place right now. So he was like, well, are y'all gonna need more resources? I said, if we don't like try to invest in technologies, then of course. But I think the cheaper route will be let's look at some technologies that can help us stay lean.
Right.
So yeah, that's really what's going on. I'm trying to show value in my team, and I actually told my manager, I was like, hey, I see this because I'm even talking to different project managers. Like, man, like this is really cool. Like, I'm glad like someone can be in the weeds of my stuff, and I can just focus on executing the project.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, and so now I'm on this journey of trying to build my team up.
Yeah.
And trying to get some of the higher ups to see, hey, if you invest in our team, you can be spot on with projects.
Right.
We can give you more of an accurate representation of this is where you're going to land when this project ends. And if you just give us the tools and maybe just a couple more resources, we're good to go. So this is my first leadership type of thing, type of I'll say role, and yeah, it's interesting.
Have you because of all that, like the way that you're kind of handling that situation is very similar to how I would handle it.
Yeah.
So it's like, have you read the Leadership Field Manual by Jocko Willink?
I have not,
bro. That's a good it's a good resource. Like, and I still go to it and like I'll click on a chapter.
Yep.
I listened to it on Audible, but I also bought it. I think it's up there. It's a green book.
Yeah, I see it. Yep.
I use it as like a reference, just the leadership.
Yep.
So like, because you have that higher up the chain that you can talk to.
Right.
I don't really have that as easily. I'm starting to get to it to where like I'm dealing with like higher level people just in real estate and like brokerage stuff and whatever. So I'm starting to get that accessibility, but everything that I've had to go through has been in that book.
That's been your reference.
And so that's been the reference of like, all right, this guy's, handling things this way. I can literally go to the chapters or the index and just put in, all right, let's just say the situation is how do I deal with two people working in separate systems?
Yeah.
So it's like my admin's working over here and my agents are working here.
Right.
How do I make these things work and be compatible?
Yep.
And there's literally, two people working in different systems.
Yeah.
How to make that work?
Yeah.
And you click on it and it's just boom, you got it. And so it's a good way of being able to, like, the leadership aspect of very similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
How to handle a meeting, right? When you're in a leadership position and you have people who have different roles inside of the thing.
Right.
So that's a good way to go.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that as a touch point.
Use as an Apple book or as an actual like website or
no, it's an Audible.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I'll share it with you when we get out of here. But
nice.
Yeah, or you can have the book. You know what I'm saying?
I think I'm just gonna take the book.
All right. Okay. But anyways, let's get into what we're talking about today.
Yes, so that was our week. For those of you,
it's only Tuesday.
It's only Tuesday. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, we always like to start the episode with debriefing. Whether we shoot it Tuesday or Friday, we always like to debrief Friday. But how's the couple days? How's your day been, or how's your week been? And we like to just catch up like that. But for this episode, the discussion topic for this episode is the dangers in having no self-control. And stay with me for a minute. I have a quote that I always like to start the episode with. Desires are a prison if you succumb to all of them. Mr. Corbin.
Yes, sir.
What does that quote mean to you, and how do you resonate with it?
A man with no discipline. Falls into every trap possible.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I like it.
So many different things in life will pop up, and you must have the discipline to be able to figure out what is important, what's not important to you as a person, right? Because we all have our own perception and our own reality to what's happening and what's going on in life. But
right.
To me, that was probably my last 10 years. Was really just trying to figure that out. Yeah. Because when I was younger, whatever it was came on my table, I was like, look, I'll figure this out. Right. And I'll just go down the rabbit hole. And it happens at work, someone's coming up and talking to you about whatever, and you get, I call them, time takers, right? Someone can sit there and talk to you for 45 minutes about nothing, and you don't have the discipline to be able to say, this is not my conversation. Right. And then you get, an hour into your day or 2 hours into the day, you look up after this conversation and it's 4 o'clock and you got to leave in an hour or whatever.
Right. And you didn't get anything that you plan to get.
Right. So it helps protect your productivity. Right. At the bare minimum.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It helps protect your relationships. It helps protect everything around you, man. Your health, your well-being, your spirit, your mind, and your body. It helps protect all of those things. Yep. Right? Yep. Because if you're willing to go and just be willy-nilly with your time, your mind, your body, your relationships, you're not going to progress in any sort of fashion. Right. What does it mean to you?
So let's start with the quote. Desires are like a prison if you succumb to all of them. I think, and this is my theory, we are not meant to have everything we desire. So let's talk. And the reason why I say that is because, and I ask myself this question, if I got everything I ever wanted in life, what type of person would I be? Yeah. And I said I would be the crappiest person. I'll be a shitty individual. And the reason why I say that is you look at in today's world and you look at people who have essentially everything they ever wanted or even more. And they're still not happy. Right. Or they have everything, and they get themselves
into trouble.
And I think when you get everything you want, it increases your appetite to where now you're more kind of in like a fantasy land where it's like, it, I wonder if this exists. If not, I probably can create it because of the fact that I like this. Let's just say like you got all the money in the world. It's not an object to you.
Yeah.
You know, you look at a lot of these big, celebrities, like, or even just, politicians or CEOs and all that, and then you see themselves getting caught up in these like sex trafficking
scandals
and and all that. And so, I look at that and I'm just like, that's just a worldly lesson where it shows you like, hey, this is the dangers of you have power, respect, all the money, all the resources in the world, and you decide to do something evil with it. So that's why I'm like, I think desires, you can put yourself in a prison if you're not grateful and if your intentions are bad with those desires.
Yeah. Yeah, there's two things that you went there. Like you there's so many things that can be expanded on with kind of what you're touching base on.
Yeah.
There's there's a couple different things that I'd like to tell you that like you see a lot of this with the people who win the lottery.
Oh yeah.
And then a year later they're in like a way worse spot than they were.
Yeah. Before
now they have debt
that
they didn't have, or they, whatever. They spend all the money on drugs and cocaine and whatever.
Well, a house, or they give it to people.
Right?
Yeah.
And you get caught up in that whole mindset.
Right.
Where you have some people who win the lottery. And you would never know it, and they're just going.
They live their regular life
because they have the discipline behind it.
Right.
But then there's also the other dynamic of what you're saying is, I've always heard money doesn't make you evil. Money brings out the person that you really are.
Right.
It highlights you.
Right. It's an amplifier.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, and you've had to go through a lot of things, right? And you've had to learn self-control, and you've had to learn or build that in yourself.
Yeah.
When you do achieve these things, you're less likely to lose it or spend it or be frugal or not frugal, but to be exaggerated by them, right? And so I think the idea behind it is genuinely being able to understand, and the reason why we do put ourselves in hard situations is so that we don't end up like Diddy and be like, okay, you know what? I've got everything I could possibly need. What's next? Kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's like chasing the dragon, right? You'll never get it.
Right.
It's just like when people start doing hard drugs like, heroin, cocaine, and all that. You can't just put that down. You're always going to want to, and the more you take it, the more your tolerance builds for it. So that means you take more, you take more, you take more. I mean, and it's I'll give you two situations, right? So we're gonna talk about money and financial discipline and sexual discipline. Financial discipline, you just touched on it. Somebody gets the lottery. They never had that amount of money in their life, so of course they're not going to know. They're just going to just act on impulse. So just spend. You're alive. Not only are you a liability to yourself, but you're a liability to everybody around you. If you got all the money in the world, it's never going to be enough. You can, because you see it all the time. People buy yachts and deep crazy mansions and all that, and you're still left with an emptiness inside you.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why it's just like all this. I think with this having money is a great tool and it's a good starting point, but it's not a destination.
Yeah.
I think it does, like you said, it does take discipline. And I think what people don't understand the consequences of having everything.
Yeah.
I think that's what gets people in trouble. Like now we talk about sexual discipline. I think as a man, that is probably the hardest thing a man can exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of how we're built and even how we're taught sometimes, where you're taught to hey, go out there and sleep with as many women as you want to.
Yep.
But now looking back, it's like, man, that's kind of dangerous, and we're really teaching each other and setting each other up for failure. Honestly,
Yeah.
I mean, you look at it, man. A lot of men get into bad situations, whether STDs or they start having get a woman pregnant. Now you got a baby mama. Now you might got 2, 3, 4, and so it's just like lust is a very dangerous thing because you will never achieve what you want because what you want will always be it's always going to be a new bar set. Like, okay, I got 2 women today. Now I want 3. I got 3. Now I want 4. I got 4. Now I want 5. And that's why, without you even knowing, you just put yourself in a prison, but you don't know it's a prison because you're getting everything you want. And it's like, I feel like there's a certain dopamine release also when you get what you want, 100%. Which is why I feel like people don't realize like you're actually putting yourself in a prison. You're putting yourself in a prison. You're putting yourself in a confinement where now you're a slave to your desires instead of understanding like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this money? What's the purpose of me getting this money? What's the purpose of me having sexual discipline and, not trying to sleep with every woman in the world, or being, or if you're married, staying married, working out your issues in your marriage so y'all can continue to grow instead of just stepping out and then now you've messed around and broken up your family.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, anytime a want becomes a need,
yeah,
you got a situation on your hands you need to address.
For sure.
Like that's where I'm happy that I found like Jocko Willink when I did, because the discipline equals freedom. Yeah. I never really understood that, right? Same. I was kind of like, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense, right?
Okay, cool.
But how does me not doing things equal more freedom?
Right.
Because the more discipline I have around my time,
yeah,
I have more time.
Right.
The more discipline I have around my sexual desires, the more choices that I have to make.
Right. You can maneuver. Right.
The more discipline I have around my finances, the more money that I have.
Right.
The more discipline that I have behind the relationships that I build.
Yeah.
The more valuable relationships are.
Exactly.
Right? It creates a value in the things around you. Versus
value equals quality.
Value equals quality. And if you dilute that value, you dilute the quality, because now you just want more of the things that you like.
I ever noticed like something that's mass produced, like let's say for food, right? Let's say like food is mass produced and all that. You ever step back and notice like, man, this don't taste this don't taste the same.
At a local Italian restaurant, versus Italian oven, right? or Olive Garden,
right.
Like there's a huge difference, because it's the quality of the food that you're eating, right? Like making macaroni from the box or whatever, versus
that's mass produced, right?
Versus sitting at home, with your girl and making pasta, right? It's a whole different
situation, man. Whole different situation. I think also, man, desires will force you, and I say force you not to be content, because I think sometimes we can look at being content like, okay, I'm just being like complacent, I'm lazy, I'm not doing nothing, but to flip it to a positive, content just means I'm grateful where I'm at. Now, of course, you still want to continue to grow.
Yeah.
But I think what you not being a slave to your desires will help you to be more present and more content with like, hey, this is where I'm at. I know where I want to be, but I'm okay with where I'm at.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, that's where it can get a lot of people in trouble because it's like you're so focused on I want to achieve, I want to get $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is what I want. And without the proper structure in place,
yeah,
you could scam PPP loan. You can do a whole bunch of stuff to get $1 million. I think if you don't have that discipline and structure to that goal, you can get yourself in a bad place.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is it's not about the desire of the things, right? Because that will grow, but I think it's more on the intent.
Yeah.
Of those desires. Right? Because I want a shit ton of money, man.
For sure.
I want it all.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Right.
But it's not a selfish. There's selfishness in that.
Oh yeah, 100%,
right.
100%.
But there's a lot of selflessness in that because I know for me to get to where I need to go, I got to bring a lot of people with me.
100%.
Right.
It's a team effort.
And for that to happen and for it to work out the way I want it up here, for it to come out here, is genuinely bringing up the people around me.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes I want that more than they wanted themselves, but there's peace in the presence of me knowing it's going to take some time to get there.
So you said something. It's a team effort. It's going to take a team effort for you to get to where you want to get to. How do you handle, like for example, the team you work with? You have a goal in mind. There's that desire, like you want to be the best realtor, best agency out there. How do you handle knowing that it's going to be a team effort? How do you handle a situation where someone in your team is not helping you with that desire of being the best agency?
I get pissed off. Because I've got guys that I genuinely care about, and sometimes they bullshit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I gotta be careful. I used to just be like, I used to just be very straightforward and this is what it is, and I used to genuinely get people upset. And then I've over the period of time, I think I've become a little soft. Too soft, honestly. Because I don't stop things immediately. I allow it to kind of fester a little bit, which I'm starting to work on again, fixing that. But I get really pissed, man. I get frustrated in the fact of like, why do I want this more than you want this?
Right.
Because you say that you want it.
Right.
But your ass is going home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Right? So the whole idea, the mentality of like a person who it's fun to want things. Yeah. Right. It's fun to say things like, man, I want this. Yeah. But it's a whole different mentality to sit here and actually be in that. Yeah. Right. I heard something, being exceptional is the process of like saying I want this and then doing the work behind it. For sure. Right. It's an exception. You are an exception to be exceptional. Right. You have to have these two things correlate together. Yep. And purposeful and have the intent behind it. Yep. But then also realizing there's some people out there that
they're just not gonna see what you see.
They're just not gonna see it, and that's okay. Right. Your job is to bring the opportunity and bring the presence behind it and say, hey, look, this is it. This is what you said you wanted. Yeah. Right. We're tracking this. Yeah. Right. As a leader, you've got to be able to track the actual values that people say. Yeah. And then have the backup behind it and say, hey, look, here's the feedback. Right. You said you wanted $5 at the end of the month. You spend all your money. Right. Here's your feedback. Right. Why?
Right.
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 And I found that the leadership aspect of a lot of things, whether it's family, whether it's relationships, whether it's business, whatever it is, it's about asking questions. Purposeful questions of, hey, Alex, you said you wanted to save up $5, bro.
And from what I'm seeing, you keep,
just checking in.
Yeah.
You said $5, you spent all your money. What happened?
Right.
And not confrontational.
Just
Alex, what happened?
Yeah.
Why'd you spend all your money?
Right.
And you say, hypothetical.
I spend it on lunch because I don't cook at home.
Okay. Yeah, man, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I get it. Everybody here at the team goes out to lunch, man.
Right.
Everybody does it, but
Right.
not everybody has the same goals you do.
I know, man, but I see Jeff over here, man. He's bringing in this Chick-fil-A, and I'm like, damn, I want some Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A sounds good.
So I was like, well, hell, since I want it, why can I get it?
Yep.
Yep.
And then so being able to have that conversation, right? And then say like, man, your goals are not the same as his goals.
Yeah.
Right. And so if your goals are here, being able to have that discipline or being able to have the control over yourself and say, look, man, how do we get back to that $5 next month? Right?
Yeah.
And then just being able to ask questions, how do we get there?
Right.
What would be some good options, do you think?
Well, I could just meal prep at home. And just
That's a good idea, man.
And just make something from Monday through Thursday, and that way, when it's at the end of the week, I still have my $5.
That's a win.
And so then now I can take that $5 and buy a meal prep the next week. At the end of next week, I got $10.
Hey,
and then we just keep on. Right. We just compound from there.
And that's what it is. It's about being able to get somebody to the idea that they created themselves, and then creating the plan behind it by themselves. And I didn't do anything. I didn't suggest anything.
Right. You just forced them. You asked the, like you say, you asked the questions, and then you gave them the space to brainstorm and formulate. And sometimes, and this is why I'm learning in relationships also, I'm learning not to shut my fiance down when she has an idea. And it's funny because she thinks, like, we're brainstorming on something. She thinks if money wasn't an object in this perfect world, this is what I want. I'm already thinking like, hey, we don't have all that. Yeah. So this is where I'm thinking. And so like when she brainstorms, sometimes because I'm here already, she's more in the clouds with it. I'm more kind of have my feet already on the ground. I tend to just shut it down. Like, no, we can't do that. Like that's not a good idea. But I like what you're saying as far as like just asking questions. Like, okay, cool objective, cool goal. What do you think it's going to take to get there? And so like when I had to check myself and I started asking questions like that and communicating like that, we started doing this. And then we started getting to a point where, okay, I'm not on the ground no more. I'm a little, I'm floating a little bit. I'm midway. You're not in the clouds no more. You're midway. But the funny thing is, me asking questions, because my overall objective was to get you to see like what you're thinking is cool, like if perfect world, but there is a reality to the situation. Yeah. Like to your example, I wanted to save money. I wanted to make sure. Let's say I wanted to save $100 over next the next month, whatever. And that was my goal. I want to save $100 out of that. So like I had this goal, start here. You already know what it takes because you might have done it before, or You know, and it's good to have like an accountability partner because that's what you're essentially what you're doing to your team or you're even just your friend or whoever. So it's okay. That's a good goal, Alex. Have you thought about what it's going to take? No, no, I haven't. You know, I just kind of thought of it, whatever. And then you might come back and say, what do you think about just at the end of each week just saving $50? Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So then now we're starting to do this a little bit. So then now the first couple tries I fucked up, whatever. Oh yeah, $50. Yeah, I saw this saw some clothes I wanted, you know, so I spent that 50. Oh, okay, Alex, well, you're the one that told me you wanted to save $1,000 in a couple months. You know, do you think that this is helping you achieve that? Well, no, but I wanted it. But you also said you also wanted to save $1,000. So I'm not saying what you're doing is right or wrong. I'm just saying, hey, you told me this is the goal you want. I'm just asking you, are you on the right path to it? Yeah. So that back and forth banter, right, is just all this is doing is here. And then we get to a point where I start to realize what I'm doing is not making sense to my overall desire and goal that I want is to save $1,000. And then now you got me to the point where it's like I finally I'm finally getting him to understand, hey, save 50 this week, save 50, 50, 50. Next thing you know, you're gonna get to $1,000. Yeah. So it's an interesting it's very frustrating. To like you said, to get somebody to see like what you're trying to see. Yeah. But at the same time, I've learned that in order for you to get somebody to see like what you're thinking and what you ultimately want, because you know, I do want a nice whatever and all that, but at the same time, I know my brainstorming is I'm reality first and then we can dream. She's more dream first than reality. So we just gotta. It's all about communication at the end of the day.
And it is. I I'll even go to the extent of like, what would be helpful, for us to get to this point.
Right.
Right. You and I want to go and invest in a company or whatever. Right. What is the best way that we can start this? Right. And you'd be like, man, I don't know. Right. My follow-up question that I don't know answers is always 100% of the time, what would it be if you did know? Right? And then I just shut up.
And you just
let you sit in it. And usually silence is a lot of things that people take for granted. They don't really pay attention to it. Yeah. But if I ask you a question like, Alex, what would be the best way for us to go about this? You say, man, I don't know. Well, what would it be if you didn't know, Alex? And you'd be like, man.
So you give them the best case.
Right. And then so you're just gonna start spitting out ideas. And you're like, well, we could put a plan together. Alex, I love it. Let's do that. Right? Yeah. And so we start building out the plan. I'm saying, Alex, what is it gonna take for us to get to where, this idea that you got? Right? How do we start selling pins? And you're like, man, let's find a distributor. Right? And I'm like, all right, find a distributor. Bro. Where do you think we're going to get a distributor from? Well, we'd probably go to Japan. All right, bet. All right, right down Japan. Yeah. Alex, quick question. We probably need to figure out how we're going to get to Japan. Right. And you're like, man, we could buy a plane ticket.
Buy a plane ticket, cool.
Alex, how much are plane tickets to Japan? And you're like, man, I don't know. I was like, we gotta find that out. Right. And then you Google $12,000. Yeah. You're like, ooh, I don't know if we can get to Japan. You got 12 grand? I don't have 12 grand. Right. All right, let's scratch. Hold that one on the stop. Right. How else can we do it? Right. And if we just go down the plane of the hypothetical planning of how do we go from A to B. Right. And it's all questions. I didn't say one damn thing. Right. And then but you start feeling like this is like your idea.
And I think also, like what you're doing is you're showing somebody like, hey, I'm in the foxhole with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm letting you lead, but I'm here with you,
Mm-hmm.
and we're gonna figure this out. But ultimately, this is your vision, this is your design, this is what you want. But you know, now there's people like us where we don't really need like, hey, we'll figure it out on our own. Like we don't need like somebody like kind of pushing, giving us that push on the back. But there's some people that in order to get the most out of them, they just need to know like, okay, someone's helping me.
Mm-hmm. The support is there.
The support is there, but but with us, we're like, hey, we're here to support you, but dude, you're the one coming up with this. I'm just throwing out questions.
Yeah, and being able to have that type of leadership works across the board.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
With the people who are super unmotivated, to the people who are super motivated by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
This is the easiest way to get everybody to that playing field of, okay, yeah, I can start doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I can start working on this. A lot of times that's all it takes is asking some questions at the correct time, at the right place, at the right conversation.
Yeah.
And people start making their own movement.
Have you ever, how do you, when you're trying to get somebody to realize a goal that they set for themselves, and let's say your first couple of interactions they're just not getting it.
Yeah.
What's the process of trying to get someone to get it? Like, how do you, like, for example, it's not necessarily a goal you set for them, but it's a goal they set for themselves. But you're at that point where it's like, I can't break through this wall.
Yeah.
How do you, in your personal experience, how do you try to get somebody where you're at that wall where you're about to give up on them? How do you try to break that wall to not give up on them?
So in everything in life, I always take the concept, people will fire themselves. Right?
I like that.
And this is personal, this is business.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody will fire themselves in a situation. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm guilty of doing this to myself and not really realizing it. But a lot of the times when someone's just not understanding what the process is, or they're just not getting it, or they're just not applying the effort that they need to apply, this is one of the more difficult pieces for me.
Yeah.
Right? Trying to get a teammate on board. But I always start asking the questions of like the higher end questions of, what does this mean to you?
Gotta go dig deeper.
Yeah. Why are you doing this?
Right.
Right. And it's more than likely a one-on-one. So I'm more taking the role of like, is this actually correct for you?
Yeah.
Right. Like Alex, man, we've had a couple one-on-ones. It's seeming like, we sit here, we have these conversations, and it kind of seems like we're just not making any movement towards the goals that you and I both want. And then obviously the company's got expectations and stuff like that.
Right.
What are we missing, you think?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you're like, man, well, my brother is he's this, and my dad just, he's
got personal.
Yeah, I got so much personal stuff going on. And I hear you. We all got, things happening in our lives, man.
Right.
What makes you want to be here?
Mm-hmm.
Man, well, do we get paid time off? Right? We get paid time off.
Benefits, right? Yeah, right. Something or right.
Okay.
Flexibility or whatever.
Yeah, I get it, man. I get it. But why do it here? Like, what about this company holds you here? And he's like, I mean, not really anything. Everybody here sucks.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, I know who I'm dealing with now, right? The negative person.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, what makes you think that? Well, John is always getting the good leads or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, man, why do you think that is? And he's like, well, John's always here, you know. He sucks up to Bob.
Right.
And he's like, all right, man, I got it. So what is holding you here? You know, again, man, it's the benefits. I can't find this anywhere else. Have you tried? Have you tried looking anywhere else? Well, no, because this is a perfect place, right?
Cop policy. It's like you're cracking the door open. You're cracking the door open for him.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, hey, let's keep you here.
Yeah,
you can leave if you want to.
Yeah, but I'm not making it a forceful situation.
Right.
And his brain starts working, right? And he's like, why am I here? Or whatever. And usually after this conversation, I can just wait it a week and that person will be out. Yeah. I don't even have to fire them. I don't have to do nothing. The person will be out.
Yeah.
Because their own personal thoughts, they're having their own ideas behind it. Now, I'm not going to just finish that conversation there. It's like, you know, Bob, your goals are, you know, blank, blank, and blank. Expectations are blank, blank, and blank. Those meet, right? For some reason, right now, you're right here. Is there anything going on right now that is stopping you from getting to A to B? And he's like, man, you know, whatever's going on in his personal life. I'm like, man, you know, something that we've got to have a conversation about is at the end of the day, these are the expectations of the company. There's nothing I can do about that. Your goals are here, but we're having a hard time getting to A to B. Right. And then like, why are getting to these goals important to you? Well, I'll be able to do this, or I'll be able to financially afford whatever. I can actually take care of the things, whatever. And you're like, all right, man. So what are we gonna do to get to where we need to be?
Yeah.
And John's gonna give you a couple different things. Or you're gonna be like, hey, I just wanna, you know, just kind of pick the brain. Have you thought about, you know, whatever, like blank competitor or whatever? Like just trying to pass them off to somebody?
Yeah.
And it's like, have you thought about, you know, what other opportunities there might be? And he may assume like you're talking about inside the company or whatever.
Yeah.
Or like, what would you actually prefer to do? Right. That's the golden question. Like, what would you actually prefer doing? Right. And he's like, man, I think I would prefer detailing cars. And you're like, no way. You like cars like that? And then you kind of pull it and then you just finish it right here. It's like, man, it sounds to me like you're in the wrong business, man. It sounds to me like you got a passion for cars.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, okay, well, at the end of this meeting, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. These are the goals. These are your expectations. This is where you're at. You tell me, like, how do we get from A to B? He's going to say blank, blank, and blank, reiterate. So I hear, just so we're on the same page, this is what I heard you say.
Yeah.
Blank, blank, and blank. Are we cool with that? And he's going to be like, yeah. But you've implanted the seed of heading out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you let him draw his own conclusion. So you really just gave him a new baseline. Like, this is where we were before. And then after you've digged a little deeper and got more of an understanding of why he's doing what he's doing, you create that new baseline, which can either, like you said, lead him out the door, or it can get him to say, like, you know what? And it's funny because it's like, let's say if he decides to stay.
Yeah.
All you showed him was how invested you were in him. And it wasn't even about work. It was just more of like, okay, let's get to the root cause of why are you doing the things that you're doing.
Yeah.
And let's see how we can apply it to what, like, obviously we have a company goal and this is what we need to be, but I need to take your personal why and try to apply it to our overall goal. And I think that's the hardest part, man.
Yeah. But you're not even, like, you're just asking the questions.
Yeah.
Right. There's conversational questions.
Right.
There's leadership questions. And then there's just overall, you know, relationship questions, stuff like that. But they're all kind of very similar.
Yeah. It's all kind of packaged. Yeah.
But there's different questions like, what would it be if you did know? That applies to all boards because that question, like you're just trying to understand.
Yeah.
Right. And whether it's my understanding or your understanding, like you have that person who says all these things like they want to achieve and do, and then they go out and spend the $5 on Chick-fil-A. And you're really just trying to understand, man, what is it about? What is it about? Like you said you wanted these goals, you're coming up with these excuses of why you haven't gotten them. Why is this goal even important to you? Because we may be chasing the wrong rabbit.
Right.
Right. Maybe it's not even that. Maybe you're happy with where you are.
Yeah.
Right. Could that be the case? Like you're happy with, not having $5 in the bank account? Like, are you happy? Like, because if you are, bro, that's cool. Yeah. Everybody's on their own playing field.
Everybody has their own lane.
And so, like, hey, man, it's cool to have that Lamborghini.
Yeah.
But you may not actually want that. Maybe you just want Chick-fil-A every week. That's cool too.
Yeah.
You figure out that. I'm gonna ask the questions to get you to that.
Yeah.
And now you make the assessment of how you actually want to make the move next. And I've seen a lot of guys speed up on that. Yeah. And they actually start applying themselves. And I've seen the other half where, bro, they're gone. Yeah. They go and do whatever they need to do.
Yeah. So back on the topic of discipline, right? Because it takes discipline to figure, once you get them to that point, like what do you want to do? And they figure out what they want to do. Now it's time to imply some discipline to achieve it.
Right.
What are some ways, in your opinion, that if someone has a goal, what are some ways they can, well, let me ask this a different way. What are some ways where you can strengthen your discipline? Like what do you think helps with someone being disciplined to a goal?
I think we've answered this on the past too.
Yeah.
Because it's the ability to do the things that you may not want to do but need to do, right? The self-control of the things around you, but also the idea behind doing hard things, man. When you wake up and go to the gym in the morning, it's hard to do, but you know that it's important. Just getting to the gym is important, right? But being able to put yourself in those situations of doing the hard things and doing the complicated things is going to give you you'll start seeing it in everything, and you'll start applying it to the things that
how you do one thing, you do all things.
Correct. Right. And then, so once you see that path in that, it starts taking care of yourself. So my follow-up question to that is, what are some of the things that you do personally to either catch yourself when you start over expanding outside of self-control?
That's a good question. The things I do.
How do you catch yourself?
To prevent. I figure out if I do this, what is the worst possible thing that can happen? And can I make peace with it?
Best and worst case scenario.
Yes. So for example, like I'm just gonna throw a scenario out there. Let's say you're in a relationship, married, whatever. You and your old lady not getting along, whatever. So you're out and about, hanging with the fellas, whatever. You're at the bar, see a girl. She looked good. She, everything. She looked right, beautiful, all that. Start talking to her, boom, y'all exchange numbers. And then, y'all starting to talk, and then starts getting to that point, right? So, well, really, before you even exchange numbers, before you even start talking to her, when you're looking at her, you ask yourself, if I started talking to her and we exchanged numbers and we hooked up, am I at peace with this potentially breaking up my marriage, my family? And there's some people that can make peace with that, but that's what I do. And that's what always keeps me to be like,
yeah,
that shit ain't worth it.
Yeah.
And then also, so that was relationships when it comes to maybe like physical, like going to the gym, whatever. If I don't take care of myself physically, can I make peace with potential health problems that can come up that I can easily prevent? That now some things that you just can't prevent,
right?
And that's fine, but the stuff I can't control, can I make peace with having a whole bunch of health issues because of the fact that I'm not eating properly and I'm not getting the proper exercise? So when I do catch myself while I missed a couple of days of the gym or jujitsu or whatever, it's like, so hold on, Alex, we getting a little, because there's a comfort in that, man. There's a comfort in, there's like a dangerous comfort to where it's like going back to a relationship. Me and my old lady, but she look good, so I'm gonna see what she talking about. There's a dangerous comfort in that, and then there's a dangerous comfort in, man, I miss a couple days. I can go home,
lay on your bed,
lay on my bed, I can eat what I want.
Man,
I'm relaxed. But for me personally, it's always like when it comes to like the physical health stuff.
Yeah,
it's really, if I miss, it's always like the third day. If I like, let's say I had a busy week and I missed the gym or jujitsu, it's always that third day where I'm like, all right, okay, this is nah.
You got to pull it out.
Yeah. We not doing this. We're not doing this. And so then I always, when I have that self realization, it's like, okay, now we getting back, getting back on the horse.
Yeah.
So that's what I normally do, man. That, to sum up the question, directly answer the question, I always, before it gets out of hand, I always make peace with, always ask myself, can I make peace with the worst case scenario?
Yeah.
And the answer is always no. Yeah. So that's why I get back on the horse with working out, with jujitsu, with making sure I'm, faithful and doing everything I need to do to make sure my lady's good. Like, so that's what I personally do.
Yeah. That's important, man.
Yeah.
That's self-regulation.
Yeah.
Self-regulation.
Yes. Yes.
That question that you've got to ask yourself, right? I always run best case, worst case, right?
Yeah. And
the follow-up to that is whatever the answer, whatever the outcome that I decide from that moment, I immediately do it. I don't think about it anymore.
Yeah.
The best case, worst case, action.
Yeah.
Right? And so I stopped trying to control all of the aspects around it.
Right.
Right? I'm not thinking about, I've been guilty of trying to control this, trying to control the situation, right? Right. Of, what are the possible outcomes? How is, the details behind it? I go, what's the best case, worst case? All right. I'm good with this, or I'm not good with this. Immediate action. I'm done thinking about it. I'm done dealing with it. This is it.
Make a decision and move.
And then whatever consequence comes from that, I got to be willing to take on the chin because I made the decision to pull that decision out of the bag.
Yeah.
And so that's my biggest thing. Yeah. Is I'm making the decision and I'm standing on that.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever wind comes after that, I'm standing on business on that.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where I just try to sit and I try to stay with that.
Yeah. So you like to do a worst best case of a potentially the potential of you losing that self-discipline, self-control. You like to say, okay, the worst case is I can, this could happen. The best case is I can be this.
Yeah.
And so that have you ever decided a worst case?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever made peace with it?
Mm-hmm. Like I said, man,
Oh,
I stand on my decision.
That's fair.
I stand on my decision. Now, I learned lessons along the way.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. I've learned my lesson along the way, which comes, that's life, right? I give myself grace, but not too much grace. And I try to hold true to my decision. So if I hurt you in my decision, I will hold to the fact like, hey, I apologize.
That's on me.
That was on me.
Right.
Lesson learned.
Right.
And from that point, I take, you as a person, hey man, I didn't mean to step on your toes. I apologize.
Right.
That was my fault. I thought I should have stepped left or stepped right. You know what I mean? On me.
Right.
It's up to you now to decide. Do you want to keep in mind like, hey, I know I'm not stepping right anymore. Do you want to still, dance? Yeah. Right. That whole concept there, and I completely, I don't hold anything against you if you're like, man, I need a new dance partner. Yeah. You're just not good. You're just not good. Right. And I'm not gonna hold you to that. Look, man, I'm learning. This whole thing about life is learning. 100%. I'm gonna try and make the best decision that I possibly can with the best information that I've got. Outside of that, that's point blank. That's it. Yeah. Now, my intent behind everything that I do is whatever that intent is. Right. And I'm pretty good now with being able to say like I'm solid in my intent. Like I'm not gonna try and hurt you as a human being. Yeah. Right. Yeah. In whatever decision that I make, it's not malintent. And so that's where I'm able to sit with my decisions. I like it. Yeah. And to conclude the episode, like we always do, in the 3 pillars of man fashion, how has what we talked about, how do you apply it to your mind, your body, and your spirit? Yep. Body is the easiest one. Not allowing myself to get too crazy in my diet, and my exercise. On the back end of that, man, I was at a point probably for the past 4 or 5 years, maybe even 6 years, where I was like, my diet was overly dialed in. Right, I was only eating meat, like if it had no balance. Yeah, there was no balance, and for me, I felt like I was, man, I look good. I got my abs, like yeah. But on the back end of that, there was other people that would look at me and like, man, you look malnourished, right? But I'm like, bro, I got abs. I can see my biceps. Like I'm solid. Right. You just fat. Right. You know what I mean? Right. And I'm like, nowadays, I'm a little bit more lenient. Yeah. I'm focused on the right things, right? If it's got too many chemicals, got too much this, right, I'm gonna step away. But I'm also gonna drink my Gatorade. You know what I mean? You're not stopping me from drinking Gatorade. Yeah. Nowadays. Right. So body wise, I try to keep dialed in. But I'm also, not so far dialed in that I'm not willing to indulge. Yeah. The mind part of it, I really try to 3 days a week. I try to spend time in the sauna and try to stay dialed in on that. Because that's my time for my space and my clarity. I feel. And so I try not to allow myself to get too far in my thoughts of like over optimism, or what's the opposite? Pessimism, right? Yeah. So I try not to fall too far in either one. Yeah. I find myself being able to if I don't have control on this, or I'm not going for something, or I don't have like a full purpose of like what's going on in my life, or my business, I can be very detrimental to myself in the sense of like, I start thinking, negative about certain things or whatever. I can fall into, man, that guy's got that. You know what I mean? You know, so I don't. I've spent a lot of time to cultivate the idea of like, you know what, there is a baseline there.
Yeah.
I try to stay up a little bit here.
Yep.
So really trying to make sure I'm doing the things I need to do, right? Implementing the habits that I need to have.
Yep.
Spirit wise, man, this has been a hard one. Because I when you feel like you over the past couple of years, I only really kind of touched base with God when I needed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or whenever like the shit just wasn't working out.
Yeah.
And to me, that's selfish. That's a place of like, hey, you know, I could really use some help right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I only need you when I need you.
Right. And that's not that's not who I want to be. That's not where I want to be. And so I've really tried to cultivate the habits behind that of really just trying to say, okay, I know that that's my baseline.
Yeah.
Right. To increase my baseline and fix that is to put things around me where it is like, hey, mentally and physically, I'm gonna put myself in a place where I'm like, okay, at night, don't forget your fucking thank yous.
Yeah.
Don't forget the reason of the good days.
Yeah.
And all of these things.
Yeah.
And trying to spend time with like seeing the value in the relationships and the time and the things that are in my life, being present in those. So being present and not losing
the deeper why.
Right.
Right.
So that's mind, body, spirit.
I love it, man. I say for me, we'll start with the mind. Two things for me when it comes to the mind. I realize my thoughts and feelings are not facts. And the reason why I say that is because I'm not a vocal person. I'm very observant, but I'm always processing and thinking. And so sometimes when stuff happens or I'm looking at stuff, I can just honestly go down a rabbit hole. And which leads me to my next part. I am careful in what I'm digesting as far as what I'm looking at.
Yep.
You know, like I'm very, you know, now that we have a social media platform, you know, I really just try to I'm very particular on what I follow. I'm particular in, you know, what I look at. Like I've been using that interested, not interested button a lot lately. And so I'm just, again, and it's actually to your point, I try to create this environment in my mind where it's like, okay, this is what we need to only digest because this is what's going to help us grow. This here, you don't need to be looking at that. Block it, no, not whatever. Now, it's a constant struggle, you know, because you be scrolling, you see, damn, she look good. Hold on, we'll check her profile. Oh, wait. Next thing you know, you done spent 30 minutes looking at scrolling her profile, and next thing you know, you scrolling other girls, whatever. And so it's just like, you know, you do fall into that trap sometimes. But I do feel like because of my maturity now, I can really catch myself before it gets down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So my thoughts and feelings are not facts, and I am careful in what I'm digesting. As far as like social media in my environment, you know, not even going, you know, I don't really go to, you know, back in the day, I used to go to strip clubs and used to go out to bars and party and all that. Now, you know, I try not to do that because I know what my mind can do with an environment like that. So that's the mind. The body, I say when it comes to self-control, self-discipline with my body, you brought up a good point. Sometimes what you see in the mirror is not, it's not really progress, and it's not really it's not really like a sign of self-discipline. So I think for me, I'm basing it more. I have like a new baseline, right?
Mm-hmm.
With my body, when it comes to self-discipline, there's still things I do, like, I try to wake up early, go to the gym, because that's like a good like start my day, and then go to work. Then in the evening, I'll go to jujitsu, whatever. So I keep those in place, but I think what I do to keep that in line is my diet, making sure I get the proper amount of sleep, making sure I've started doing a little bit more research on like good supplements to take, like creatine, making sure I'm having the proper amount of protein, um, proper amount of vegetables, eliminating sugar, processed food. Like now, of course, you know, there was a point within myself, where I was too far dialed in, where like to your point, damn, I look good. I can see all the definition, but then you might go to the doctor or you might get some blood work done and say, hey, like you're actually in bad shape. So I would say body wise is really, again, it's careful what I'm digesting, right? And that's more of like food and making sure I get the proper amount of rest, taking the proper amount of supplementation, drinking the proper amount of water. That's been one of my biggest things, because I actually got blood work done a couple weeks back, and the doctor pretty much said, hey, you need to drink more water.
Right.
And he was telling me like most people walk around dehydrated. So he was like, you need at least drink a couple liters of water a day. So I just said, I'm just gonna drink a gallon. Yeah. So for the past 2 weeks, I've just been drinking a gallon, and I just feel better, feel more fluid. Yeah. Skin clearing up, all that. So, always peeing. Always pissing, right? That's all the bad things. Like, damn, I just went to the bathroom 10 minutes ago. But yeah, those are some of the things I'm doing as far as like just applying self-control, discipline to my body. And then spiritually, just getting back to consistently reading devotionals, and now I'm starting to read my Bible too. Just staying in God's word, and really having those moments where, whether it's early in the morning when I'm going to the gym and I'm in the car, like there's like the past couple of weeks I've just been in silence. And so I'm just having like a regular conversation with God and asking him to, this is what I'm struggling with, give me the strength to overcome that, give me the wisdom to make the best decisions, not only for myself, but for the people around me. And then also what I've been doing, I've been leaning into some of my mom's friends. Like we have some family friends who like from the church we went to, like I grew up with, like they're like uncles to me. So especially this like space I'm in now, about to get married and all that, I've leaned into them more, especially my dad also, but also just different men too, who have been married for 30 something years and have experience going through getting married and having a kid, and then, staying married and dealing with issues in your marriage and all that. And so, I'm getting from trying to be the lone soldier to now trying to find good examples of, you know what, I like what you're doing. How can I apply it to myself? So, and really the common theme for the mind, body, and spirit for me is just putting yourself in an environment where you can set yourself up for success. Amen. And so that's how I apply self-control and self-discipline for the mind, body, and spirit.
I love it. Bro, we did a number on it. Guys, we appreciate you listening, staying with us, rocking and rolling.
Yes. Yes.
Chris, Thanksgiving's coming up.
Yep.
Got to spend some time with the family so there's a win. While you guys are spending time with your families, make sure you pass along some Mind, Body, Spirit, Three Pillars of Man podcast. And keep this thing growing.
Like, subscribe, share. And like we always say, we're not really investing in no big equipment or nothing. This is just really two brothers who enjoy just trying to grow. And at the end of the day, iron sharpens iron. And so as we continue to grow, we want you to grow with us. So again, like, subscribe, and share. And this concludes the Three Pillars of Man.